So welcome to our Mathology.ca online information session. We're about to start, and I'll just let you know that we are in listen mode only, so we'll have a recording at the end that we can send to everyone. And as we mentioned, there will be Q&A at the end, so please feel free to write your questions down or put them in chat, and we'll open up the line at the end and answer any questions that you might have. So we'll begin. So just a quick overview of Pearson Mathology and Mathology. It's a set of K-8 print and digital resources that is rooted in academic research and best practices, co-created with over 1,000 classroom teachers and consultants across Canada, and underpinned by a practical Canadian learning progression. Mathology helps you to know where your students are and define next steps for growth, helps you engage students at all levels while building their confidence in their math skills, helps instill a love of and a joy for math through rich, fun math activities and stories, supports job-embedded professional learning for teachers, and also supports French immersion, should you have French immersion where you are. All the resources are adapted versus translated, so the language does not get in the way of the math. So on the screen here, you'll see right in the center, the research and professional learning resources that helped support Mathology. Some of the resources you may know from Taking Shape to What to Look For, Teaching Math with Meaning, or Elementary Middle School Mathematics. The learning progression is there as well, and we'll talk more about it shortly, as well as a research document we have called Mathematics Success for All. That was the foundation for Mathology, and then on the right-hand side, you'll see our classroom resources. On top, we have the grade 1 and 2 activity kits. We have the math little books. There are 72 of them from K to 3. And at the bottom, you'll see grade 1 Mathology.ca, and that is the resource that we're going to be talking about today. When we first started looking at creating new resources for math, this would be 2 to 3 years ago, one of the first things we did is we took a look at the math teaching journey. And both you and I know that it can be a time-consuming, multi-step process, starting with long-range planning to short-term planning. You're teaching and preparing to teach, assessing, reporting, as well as professional learning. And we wanted to make that journey a little bit simpler, and the promise of technology is that it will help do that. So we're going to take you for a walk along this journey through the lens of Mathology.ca. Its proposition, it's to simplify and enhance that math teaching journey we just looked at through smart use of technology. It also helps streamline planning, teaching, assessment, and professional learning. And for any of those who have helped us out and have started using our print resources, either the activity kit or the math little books or the learning progression, it really seamlessly integrates those components together in one place. So what exactly is it? It's a simple online tool for teachers containing rich math activities and pedagogical supports, and it's powered by 5 core functionalities: search, plan, teach, assess and track, as well as professional learning. And it's aligned to curricula in each province in Canada. And it's really supported by rich math activities and pedagogical supports. So I thought I'd take you for a walk. Instead of talking about it, I thought I'd take you for a walk through Mathology.ca. And it should appear on our screen momentarily. So this is the landing page for Mathology.ca, and right off the top, you can see that there's a variety of ways of searching. When we first did our research around creating a online resource for Mathology, we heard from a lot of teachers that some of the time-consuming things that they do will spend time online looking for lessons. And these lessons might come from teacher-paid teachers or Pinterest or a variety of different sources. And it's really hard to know if these lessons that are living out in the web are great for your curriculum or for the students in front of you. And so we thought we'd create a really rich bank of lessons that you can search and know that it already matches your curriculum and the students and meet them where they are. So our first page then is search. And I'm going to walk you through the 3 different ways that you can actually search in Mathology.ca. And I'm going to start with search by curriculum. So when I hit search by curriculum, what will come up? And the version that I'm actually on today is the Ontario curriculum, but every province has its own version of this. And so when you click search by curriculum, in the version that you're on, it will your curriculum will come up. And you can see that you can search by strands, overall expectations. And when I click on an overall expectation, and it drops down to specific expectations. So I'll scroll down a bit and you can see that each one of the specific expectations has a search bar here. When I click on that, what happens is you'll see all of the lessons that are in Mathology.ca that match that specific expectation. And at this point, for this one, there are 10 lessons built in here that help support. And there's a variety of ways that you can actually tame this fire hose of information down a little bit more as well. You can, by grade, you can pick your grade. And for here, we have grade 1. By the type of lesson, whether it's an activity, a consolidation lesson, or a math little book. And you can also search by strand. So that's another way of defining this search a little bit more. So searching by curriculum is a great place to start. And I'm going to take us right back to the beginning. There is another way that you can search by progression. So when we first started building Mathology, we created what's called the Pearson Canada Learning Progression. It is an amalgamation of some of the best learning progressions out there. So there's Prime, First Steps in Math, and all those progressions are quite large. And we wanted to create a learning progression that would be simple enough to access and use in the classroom that would help us build our learning resources off of it. So I'm going to go into search by progression. So the Pearson Canada Learning Progression contains 5 strands, which you see across the top. And then you'll see the big ideas from the curriculum. Numbers tell us how many and how much is the first one, for example. And under that, you'll see some conceptual threads. And the first one here is applying the principles of accounting. So when I click on principles of accounting, you'll see that the threads that go throughout our Pearson Learning Progression, and it allows you to go forward and back. And so right in the middle, for example, says the number name sequence backward from numbers to 10, and knows that the last counting word tells how many objects in a set, so cardinality. So if you have students that are at that place in this developmental continuum, again, there's a search bar. And when you open that up, you'll see that we have a math little book, Acorns for Wilaya, that helps support that place in that developmental continuum. So that's another way of searching as well. And I'm going to take us back. I'm at the top. I'll take us back to the home page. There is another really simple search, and that is the first one that you see here. And it looks very much like a Google search, but it really is based on your curriculum. And so say I'm looking for lessons that are great for skip counting. I'm just going to type in skip counting and hit search. And you'll see we have 80 results just for skip counting alone. And I'll scroll down so you can see the wealth of lesson plans you have in there. And again, what you might want to do is modify that by grade. And that might bring that down. Let's see if we go into K. We have 10, for instance. And if you go into grade 1, you'll see that there's a lot more around skip counting at grade 1. You can, again, filter that by activity, consolidation, or little book, and then by strand. So that's a great way of doing a search by any type of keyword that you might have in math. So what I'm going to do next is show you the last piece around searching, and it's at the very, very top, and it's called plan. So when I click on plan, you'll see that there's a most recent plan and all plans. When I click on all plans, we wanted to help you search by some of the best lesson plans that are already built. And so in Mathology.ca, we have two areas that you can plan with. You can create a new plan, and I'll share with you what that looks like momentarily. But when you're first adopting a new resource, and this is true for any new resource, it's often helpful to have a lesson plan or a yearly plan already built for you, until you get used to the resource. And so what we did is we took a look at sample plans for a year They're called sample long-range pathways. And we know that math teachers have a variety of ways of teaching math throughout the year. Some may start with number first and then go into a different strand, whether it's measurement or patterning. Some may start with patterning first or with measurement. And so we've provided 3 different pathways depending upon the teacher and how they plan their year. So I'm just going to take us into the very first one we see here, which is option 2. And when you do that, this gives you a year at a glance with all the lessons, brings up all the lessons that support that. And so the very first, I'm sure it's not the first week of September, maybe it's the third once teachers get used to their students. When you hit that, you'll see that there are some lessons already built out for that first week. The very first one you see is Midnight and Snowfall, and it's actually a math little book that supports patterning. And repeated patterning. And there's 5 activity cards as well that you can use within that first week to 2 weeks. A little bit later in September, you'll start looking at creating patterns. So I'll click on that, and you'll see that Midnight and Snowfall is still there. Our math little books roughly correlate to 2 weeks of instruction. They're very rich, and so those will cross over 2 weeks, and then you'll see a few new lessons for that. And I'm going over to the left one more time. You'll see that we switch from patterning to counting. And here you'll see that we have 3 new math little books that you can access, as well as some more activities. So we really wanted to make planning with Mathology as simple as possible for teachers first taking a look at that. The other thing that we want to do as teachers become accustomed to Mathology, usually they'll have a little bit more headspace and the ability to create their own plans, and we wanted to give them that option. So when I hit create a new plan at the very top, you'll see the option of starting with a blank plan or using one that's already existing. So I showed you some existing plans. You can build on top of that if you like, but you can also start with a blank plan. And so we'll do that. And we may call this blank plan skip counting 1 and save. And when you do that, you'll come across this screen here, and you can title this folder anything you like. It might be skip counting week number 1, whatever you would like to call it, you can do that. On the right-hand side, you'll see a panel that's called favorites. All of the lessons that are in Mathology.ca, there's 101 at grade 1, and there's 185 at grade 2. As you're using them, you may think, this is my favorite lesson of the bunch. I'm going to favorite that, and you get a chance to heart it at the side of your lesson. Once you've done that, it populates this favorites bar, and it allows you to start building your lessons from there. So it looks like I really liked operational fluency more or less, so I'm going to just drag that lesson over and add it to the lessons. You can see here that you can write a comment about it and then start building from there. I'm going to also add in counting on and counting back as part of my lesson for the week, and I might write a note about that. The other thing that I really like about this, we know that a lot of teachers and districts have developed some of their own really great lessons. You might have it on a Google Doc, and we want you to be able to make use of those really easily. So you can actually add a non-Mathology lesson. So you'll see this at the very bottom right-hand corner. When you do that, you can put a title on that lesson, a description, and what links it to Mathology.ca and your lesson is the URL. So if it's on a Google Doc or it's your favorite YouTube video that shows skip counting the best way, you just put that URL in there and save, and then that will become an item at the bottom that you can drag into your lesson. So a variety of ways of planning, whether it's plans that are already there or creating your own plan. There's lots of rich resources in there to help you do that. So that is our quick overview of search and plan. I thought I'd take you next into what an actual lesson looks like now that we've seen a broad overview. So as I told you before, I love skip counting. So I'm going to take us into an activity called Gourd the Groundhog. I'll walk you through the different pieces of a lesson. You'll see at the top there's an about, there's details, assessment, and related resources, and a bucket called professional learning. So I'll walk you through each one of these pieces. With about, it's a really quick overview of what's happening in this lesson. It'll give you the activity time as well as the group size. When we developed Mathology.ca, we knew that there was a lot of teachers out there who may not, especially in the early grades, have math as their background. And so we wanted to give as much background information as possible. So that content background is there for those who feel that they might need it. As I scroll down, you'll see that the focus for this lesson is skip counting forward by 2s, 5s, and 10s. The curriculum that you, when you have it in your province, your curriculum will populate here. So you can see that what the curriculum coverage or uncoverage, as I like to say, is there. Cross-strand connections. So this one, even though it's in number sense and enumeration, there's some really great connections here with patterning and algebra, and that will tell you what that looks like. The processes and competencies from your curriculum. And at the very bottom, you'll see our Pearson Canada learning progression come to life. And the big ideas, this lesson for Gord the Groundhog actually unpacks 2 big ideas from the learning progression. Numbers tell us how many and how much, but also quantities and numbers can be grouped by or partitioned into equal sized units. And it will highlight where in that developmental continuum this lesson resides. And you can see that it highlights it in blue. So that's a quick overview of the about. Where the lesson really starts going is in the details. So when we look at the details, you'll see that we have a lesson started here. It's looking at number sense. This is the lesson for Gord the Groundhog. And you'll see that we also have provided links to any of the assessment masters or curriculum correlations you might need right on this page, so it's easy to find. All of these assessment masters and correlations are provided in both in PDF and Word. You may love the PDF as it is and download it and use it, but you also might want to modify this a bit. And so the Word document is there as well. And a lot of teachers do that based on the students they have in front of them. The lesson is a simple 3-part lesson before, what to do during with this lesson, as well as ideas for differentiation. And the piece that teachers really appreciate is the consolidation piece. As you're doing an activity, it's really great to understand where my students are and are they understanding this activity, and some really great tips on what to look for as the students are doing that activity. One last piece I'm glad that we've incorporated in here, and teachers have told us they really help. As you're circulating through the room and students are participating in Gord the Groundhog, you can see them do the activity, but it's really powerful to be able to uncover what they're thinking. And in order to do that, you need some great probing questions. And so we've provided 4 or 5 probing questions for each lesson, so you can see and circulate and use those questions to uncover student thinking. As I scroll down, you'll also see a section called images. These are the actual print cards that we have in our activity kits, the print version. I'm going to walk you through what those are, and you can see how you might use them in Mathology.ca. So the first one I click on is the teacher card from the print activity kit, and you can see that it was live online earlier, and this is the print version. You might want to project that or make use of it. And that's the front side of the card. The piece that most teachers really love about our activities is the back side. And so on the back side of this card, you'll see something called Helping Students to Progress, what you might see here and next steps. And this is a really great way of noticing what your students are doing as they're doing this activity, and really great supports on the next steps that help you support that student as they progress. So in the first box, for instance, skip counting forward behaviors and strategies, you may witness a student who does not associate the skip counting number with a quantity. That happens quite a bit. And so here's some really great in the moment next steps that you can do with those students to help them progress further along. As they go from left to right and down to the bottom, students are closer to on grade, and those are the behaviors that you'll see for on grade. So that's the back of the card. The other piece that teachers really appreciate, especially now that this is in Mathology.ca, are the student cards that you can now project. So you have a whiteboard at the front of the class, and you're playing Gord the Groundhog. You actually can have students come up and circle the acorns, say they're skip counting by 2s, and they can start circling that on the whiteboard, or skip counting by 5s. would be the next one. So that's one side of Gord the Groundhog. It's the more difficult side. We wanted to provide you with another side of this card that is simpler for students who may be struggling. And so the back of the card has fewer acorns. In this case, it has 20. So that is Gord the Groundhog. Should you want to put these cards in students' hands, or if you have the activity kit and you have the 10 cards that are laminated and maybe you lose one, we know that doesn't happen often in class, but in case it does, the other piece that teachers really appreciate is the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see a print icon. That allows you to print that card out again and make use of it. We also have some really great multi-use cards in here. The 100 chart, of course, is quite useful in the case of skip counting. And we also want to provide teachers with an example of what skip counting by 2 might look like as you're doing this activity. So that is the cards themselves. And at the very bottom, we also wanted to build in some really great widgets that you can use in front of class as well. And so here we have the Pearson Canada Hundreds chart tool at the bottom. Each one of these interactives match exactly with the lesson that you're doing right now. And so the 100 chart tool is a tool that you might want to use for skip counting. And you may want to skip count by 2s, enter and start. And this allows students to come up and skip count by 2 should they want to. They may want to change the color of the cell and have another student come up and skip count by 4. This allows you to do that. So a really handy widget that you have access to. The last piece I'm going to show you in About, and this is one that we're really glad that we've been able to incorporate this. On the far right-hand side, you'll see a panel that says Professional Learning. In that Professional Learning panel, you'll see what's called Learning Highlight Videos. We've created 101 short videos, roughly a minute in length, that supports teachers as they're about to start this activity. So you've read through the About, you know the details of the lesson, but you might want to know a little bit more about this lesson. What does it look like? Why am I doing it? What do I hope to accomplish by this lesson? And so I'm going to click on this learning highlight video on the right-hand panel. Turn this up a little bit. And I'm going to play this. This is the short video that supports Gord the Groundhog for teachers.
When we skip count, we organize objects into smaller groups of equal size and count by the number of objects in each group. For example, there are 2 cubes in each group, so we skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6. Or there are 5 cubes in each group, so we skip count by 5s. 5, 10, 15. No matter what number we skip count by, the last number said represents the total number of acorns. Do your students realize that no matter how the 50 cubes are counted, the quantity stays the same? Or how the fewer cubes in each group, the more groups there are? During consolidation, discuss how skip counting may help students, both at school and at home.
So that is an example of our Learning Highlights video. And again, for Mathology.ca Grade 1, we have 101 of those videos, so 1 for each lesson. When we get into Grade 2, we actually have more lessons. We have 185 lessons at Grade 2. When we did our research with teachers, we learned what's the same with students at Grade 1 and Grade 2 and what's different. And one of the big differences, as you go up the grades, you might have found this as well, the gap in student understanding tends to widen as you go up the grades. And so the need for intervention and intervention support was greater. And so we've included some great intervention lessons in the Grade 2. And we also wanted to incorporate some shorter lessons that you might use just for 10 minutes at the beginning of class. And so we have some math everyday activities in the Grade 2 as well. So a very rich resource. That is the details. I'm going to take you next to assessment. So we just spent some time looking at a lesson and looking at that back of that side B card where we are watching students and seeing where they are as they're doing that activity. The print cards are great for that. But when you're looking at doing that ongoing observation in a digital environment, it becomes a little bit easier. So I'm going to go into assessment. So when we're looking at this screen that you're seeing here is really a mirror image of the back of that activity card. I'm going to take us into a classroom. Let's see if Miranda's class. I'm going to pull some folks up for a minute. And this assessment piece allows you to build a classroom. You put your students in with their names, and you might have an iPad with you as you're circulating and watching students play Gord the Groundhog. You can very simply drag and drop those students into each one of these boxes. So rather than write their names on the back of the print card, this allows you to do the drag and drop much faster. So that is a great tool for observing, but the real power of Mathology.ca and Mathology in general is not just seeing where your students are, but understanding where they are and what are the next steps you can take in the moment to help support those students progress. And so you'll see at the bottom of each one of these boxes, there are next steps. So I'm going to show you what those next steps look like. So Giselle, Giselle's a student who does not associate the skip counting number with a quantity. What do I do to help Giselle move from this box to the next one? The next steps, they're in the moment. A very simple suggestion to help you and help Giselle move forward as she's there. When we go into the next box, the next steps for Susan and Jerry, here's some in the moment tips for them. And say you have a student, Jerry's now moving into this next box. You've helped him. What are the next steps once you have Jerry here? So student mixes up the numbers in the skip counting sequence. What can I do to help Jerry? In the next steps for this one, you can see that there's some in the moment work. I just mentioned the fact that we have intervention. There are often interventions in these next steps. And so I'm going to click on the intervention that we have here. Students having difficulty with skip counting sequences, what can I do in the moment? This will take you right to a mini lesson that supports Jerry in that. And so it's a short, small lesson. You can see it's small group. It might be one student, might be two. The materials you're using here are linking cubes. And there's a 100 chart that you can actually print off in PDF and Word. And so this is a really short lesson that will help support students that you had found in that box. So I'm going to take us back to where we just were. And so that is in the moment assessment. The other piece that we've linked to this is a great way to help support you. Say you're approaching parent-teacher night, or it might be getting close to your first or second round of report cards. And it would be handy to have some analytics based on the lessons that you've done. So I'm going to take the mouse up to the top. We've talked about home, briefly about favorites and planning. In analytics, this is where the work that you've just done comes to life in a dashboard. So you have classroom analytics and student analytics. I'm going to take us into the class analytics for a moment. And we'll get into, so there, we're in the classroom that we were just in. And so you can see all of the lessons that you have used this term. And you'll see a variety of colors down the middle. In progress is orange. On track is green. They're further along in that lesson. And there are some spots here where that student might be stuck at the beginning and needs some attention. And so you can see that you have some students that you might need to go back and take another look at counting to 50. There's some support that are needed there. So that's the activity view. You may want to see how much of the curriculum you've uncovered with these lessons to make sure there aren't any gaps. And so the first thing that you'll see here will be the overall expectations, and you can see which ones have been uncovered to date. When you get into advanced view, that's where your specific expectations will come up, and you can see a much more detailed view of where you might be based on the curriculum. Now that's the classroom view, so that's a great way of seeing where your classroom is in general. You may want to then take a look at a student. So here's class view where we just were. In student view, we're looking at student Jeff Adams, who's in your class, And here are the lessons that you have done with Jeff. And you can see exactly where Jeff is. He's in progress with a number of these lessons, doing great with a number of them. And there's a few more that needs attention. And so say you are with your parent or with Jeff, and you want to talk about some places where he's on track and doing great, you can show him exactly where he is. If there's some spots that need attention, you can go into the details on that and take a look at where that student might be struggling and go to some next steps that are valuable to help support Jeff. So that is the analytics for Mathology, tied very closely to the assessment. I'm going to take us back. We've looked at now at about, we've looked at details, assessment, and the last piece I'm going to walk you through today is related resources. We mentioned very briefly that there are mini lessons that support students. This is where they reside. And so at the top, you'll see there are mini lessons that help support teachers for on grades. So skip counting forward by 2s, 5s, and 10s. What does a mini lesson look like there? Here's a mini lesson. You can print out each one of these mini lessons. Any supplies that you might need, assessment masters are here on the page and can be printed off as well. Typically, you will find 2 intervention lessons, mini lessons as well. For skip counting, we have 2 here. So students having difficulty with skip counting sequences, that happens quite often. And so here is a mini lesson that supports that student. That's the one that we had supporting for Jerry. The second one, students having difficulty understanding that the number of objects will be the same whether they are counting by 1s, 2s, 5s, or 10s. That can happen. And there's a mini lesson that supports that student as well. So differentiated instruction and personalized learning comes to life with Mathology.ca here. You also may find that you have some students that are ready for more. And so there's an extension mini lesson as well. So students ready to use skip counting and solve problems, great. What can I give them to support them as they progress with this extension? So you can see that there's a mini lesson there as well. And again, you can print it off. The other pieces of support that we have in related lessons is possible misconceptions. And you know that happens in almost every lesson. With skip counting, when skip counting student sees the number as labels rather than quantities, that can happen. And so we wanted to give teachers with some really great in the moment what to do's to support them with that misconception. We've also provided some next steps in class and next steps at home that you can do right after this lesson. So with next steps in class, you've just played Or the Groundhog, you've done some in the moment assessment. Here are some ideas for you to progress in the next steps in class. And next steps at home is really important as well. If you have a home connection with your parents and you would like to be able to let them know what your students are doing in the class, you'll see that there's some great supports here that you can send home in PDF, in Word for your parents on an ongoing basis if you like. We also have provided a word wall for skip counting. And at the bottom, this is going to look a lot like our learning progression. You can see that there are related lessons, either on grade, below grade on this side, or going above grade. And so as you move that continuum along, you'll see that there are some more lessons that help you knowing where to go next. And so the last stop on our Mathology.ca journey today will be our Math Little Books. You'll see the lessons that we just walked through are great for our activity kit lessons. I wanted to show you what a Math Little Book lesson looks like. So I'm going to click on Safari in the bottom right-hand corner. So this is a really great related lesson around skip counting. And so this book on Safari, we have the lesson plan for the Math Little Books look very similar. You'll have an about and a details and a related resources page. So in the about, background information on what this Math Little Book is about. We'll give the reading level, and this reading level comes from Fountas and Pinnell. Most of our Math Little Books are really great for guided reading, but if a student would like to read this on their own, that reading level will help. The Math Focus, and each of the Math Little Books has this Math Focus on the back cover, but it's great to have it here in Mathology.ca as well. Your Curriculum Connection if you want any cross-strand connections, they're here. And you can see that on Safari has a lot, and so it's quite a rich resource. The competencies and processes from your curriculum, and exactly where this math little book resides on our Pearson learning progression, or that developmental continuum. So on Safari, it's unpacking two big ideas. Numbers tell us how many and how much, as well as numbers are related in many ways. And the highlight in blue is exactly where this book resides on our Pearson learning progression. And you'll see as I scroll up, in the professional learning bucket, we have more videos here that relate to the big ideas and help you unpack that big idea. In the details, this is where you find out a little bit more about the math little book. You'll also find out that there's a wordless text. So each one of these math little books are wonderful for projecting and sharing in class. But we had a lot of teachers say to us that when they begin with a little book, whether it's in literacy or math, they would love to start with a wordless text first to help with prediction and a variety of different unpacking skills there. And so there's a link to a wordless text that you can project at the front of the class. You also have a link to the On Safari little book. And so I'm going to click on that. And so what you'll see here is a version of our math little book that you can project at the beginning, at the front of class. The read and listen is really great. And so these are, if you have the print version, you have access to these already, but it's a read aloud version of that math little book, which is wonderful for centers. So I'm just going to play that.
Let's go on a safari. There are so many animals to see. What do you think they will be?
And this will play each one of the math little books for you. And it's a great, again, for a listening center if you have the print versions. When we're back on the page on details, you'll also see lots of support here for the first read for the teacher as well. And under related resources, you'll see that we have ideas for after reading, and all of the line masters that you might use for these math little books are linked directly here, and again in PDF and in Word, in case you would like to modify those. At the bottom, you'll see some related lessons or related math little books that really help support to help you differentiate with those students. You may want to go to some that are below grade from there, or above grade as you keep going along this continuum. So that is a look at the math little books. So that is our a walkthrough of Mathology.ca. I'm going to show you one other piece that may help you. So I'm going to scroll up to the top to home. So when I go back to home, this is right at the very beginning where we just were, and you'll see some lessons pinned here. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about favorites and how you can use the pinning piece here. We did a lot of observations in math classrooms, and we watched teachers as they taught grade 1 and grade 2, and we noticed that when teachers walked into the classroom, they'll have their lesson plan in front of them and any materials that they might use, whether it's a little book or an activity card, and they would place them right on their desk. And so this is your literal desktop for the day. And so you have the opportunity to favorite some lessons, but also pin them to your desktop so you do not have to go searching for these lessons. They're right here in front of you. And so how did I get these 3 lessons pinned to the top of my desktop? I'll go into favorites at the very top. So with any lesson, I mentioned earlier, you can favorite these, and then they'll come up into this panel here. Once you have favorited your lessons, you have the ability to pin them. And so you can see there's some pins here already. So I've walked it through the students through on Safari. I love that, but I want to move on to another new book. So I've just unpinned on Safari, and we may be going to the family cookout next. So I'm going to go down, scroll down to that where that book is in favorites, and click on the pin. And you'll see that it's now a favorited and pinned lesson. So when I go back home, you'll see that on Safari was replaced by the family cookout. So some really practical things to keep in mind with Mathology.ca, with all the support of the teachers across Canada that helped us develop this, and some great beta testing. We've made this as practical as we can. So that is the walkthrough of Mathology.ca. I'm going to pause here. If you have questions for Daniel, if you want to either ask him or put it in chat while I pull up the last piece of our presentation, that would be great. And it looks like we might not have any questions now, but we'll open up the Q&A at the very end. So this is the last few slides that gives you a little bit more information around Mathology.ca. So you can see that Mathology.ca is a carefully curated curriculum-focused lessons all in one place. It incorporates grade 1, which is available right now. So I'm showing you the left-hand side of the page. Grade 1's available now. We also have Mathology available in French, and so Mathology grade 1 will be available in the fall, and grade 2 is also available in the fall. So we have lots of resources here already in Mathology.ca. So at grade 1, we have 101 lessons from the activity kit. We have 34 K-1 math little books. We also have that Pearson learning progression embedded in, and I showed you some of the videos that we have. We have 100 plus at grade 1. When you go down to grade 2, I mentioned that we have a few more. So we have 185 lessons at grade 2. We have 38 grade 1 and 2 math little books. The learning progression is in there as well, and 160 plus professional learning resources. As we're going up the grades, you'll see that we have English grades 3 and 4 of our print resources coming in the fall of 2020. Usually when I get to this point, most people ask, well, how much is it? So I thought I'd incorporate a slide on that. So Mathology.ca pricing, we have 2 flexible ways of looking at pricing. You could toe dip for a year and see what it's like. So we have a 1-year subscription. It's per teacher, and it's $140 per year per teacher. And we also have a 5-year subscription that's available, and it gives you a 5% discount. So the 5-year is $665. So that's roughly $133 a year for 5 years. When we look at bundle pricing, we have some schools already using our activity kits and our print math little books. Adding in Mathology.ca, there's actual discounts there, and I'm going to put up at the end who you should talk to. It's Ken, your local rep, about that. But we also have discounts if you wanted to start with Mathology.ca and add print into it. And so there's discounts there as well. If you have not tried Mathology.ca yet and you think, you know what, this overview has been great, but I want to try it for myself. So if you need to see more, you can actually ask for a free trial. And we have on the slide where you can get a free trial. It's etr.mathology.ca, and that will get you to a registration page. You can register for that free trial, and that's a way of testing it out on your own. That's great. We've had folks come to our webinars that have just completed the trial and they may need a few supports. There's a spot there, help at Mathology.ca, if there's any specific questions around the platform itself. We are doing another session tomorrow for Ken's group in Atlantic Canada, and it's at the same time tomorrow. So if you know of anyone that you would think would appreciate this, you can send them the link that Daniel just sent you earlier and have them come to our session. That would be great. So we've reached the part where we're at the Q&A, and Daniel, can I ask you to unmute our guests, and maybe we can just have a discussion here if there's any questions. Please ask them. And the last slide I'm going to put up is Ken's contact information in case you have no other questions and you want to just get in touch with Ken. That's his information there. So that is the end of our walkthrough. Please feel free to ask questions, and I'll leave this slide up for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it.
Just so everybody knows, I've unmuted everyone.
Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
And if there aren't any questions, what I will do is stop the recording now, and we'll share this recording with you who have attended. So thanks for that, in case you need to review it at any time, and we'll also send it to those who weren't able to meet us today. So
thank you.